Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have another great presentation for you. Let's go ahead and get started. So as you know, everybody's familiar with the Wednesday webinar series. If you have any topics or any speakers or anything you would like to see discussed on here, please let me know. Shoot me an email. I'll do my best to find somebody to fill that role. Little housekeeping today. So questions, if you have any questions, this is a safe space. There are no stupid questions. You may raise your hand at any point, unmute yourself and ask Jennifer herself. Or if you don't want to do that, you can type it into the chat. I will be monitoring the chat today, and I will do my best to get that question answered before we get off here. As always, I'll send up a follow-up email either late this week or early next week with a link to the recording and a copy of Jennifer's presentation. The recording will be on our YouTube channel as always. And so for today, you guys are going to learn about some strategic planning. It doesn't have to be overwhelming or boring. Jennifer is going to break down how to turn a communication audit into a roadmap for long-term success. Whether you've never conducted an audit or don't know what to do with the results, this session will help you bridge the gap between day-to-day demands and big picture goals. So you're going to learn how to set up achievable 5-year targets, gain leadership buy-in, and adapt your plan as your organization and community evolve. So if you're ready to move beyond reactive messaging and start building something sustainable, this webinar is for you. So a little bit about our speaker. Jennifer is the Public Information Officer for the town of Collierville, Tennessee, where she has worked for over a decade. She manages traditional and digital media. She spearheaded the launch of the town's website and oversaw the creation of its first logo and branding strategy. Jennifer has managed emergency communications during critical events, including a ransomware attack, the pandemic, and a grocery store mass shooting. Previously, she was Collierville's first digital media specialist, driving a 70% social media growth, creating the town's email communications, and contributing to Collierville's win as America's Best Main Street by Parade magazine. Jennifer is a Leadership Collierville graduate, a Memphis Business Journal Top 40 Under 40 honoree, a Top 100 local government influencer, and serves on the boards for Leadership Collierville and Lakeshore Camp and Retreat Center. She is a West Tennessee native and holds a journalism degree from the University of Memphis. So everybody, please help me give a virtual round of applause to Jennifer. Jennifer, I'm going to stop my screen. You may say hello to everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to this. I appreciate your time and effort you've put into this. And say hello to everyone.
Great. Thank you so much for that very nice introduction. I'm Jennifer Preston, like he said, and I'm really excited to be here presenting to you all. And one of the things I just wanted to share really quickly about how I got to this point of thinking maybe we should do a communication audit, because some of the feedback I got initially, especially from my supervisor, was, why do you want to audit yourself? Nobody wants to do an audit. Nobody likes to do audits. And to that, I said, well, since I've been in this role, which at the time I'd been the PIO thing for about 5 years, and was very reactionary to everything. And I had a lot of major critical events happen that were listed there in the bio over those few years. And I really just wanted to take a beat and think, how can I proceed in a more strategic way? You likely have a strategic communication plan, but I wanted to do something a little bit different about how I could improve communication methods as a whole. So I wanted something a little bit more focused on what do we need to add, what do we need to take away, what can we do better? And so that's kind of what brought me to this. And I also learned about it in a conference that I went to, and I didn't even realize it was a thing until that moment, until I went to that conference just a couple of years ago. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. Let's see here.
Well, while you're doing that, I will say I love the idea already. I don't like to do work if it's not important. So I'm hoping that that's what you're going to tell us with doing this audit is we can find out what really is important and what people are paying attention to. So there you go, your screen. There you go.
Thank you. And you're exactly right. You know, sometimes we think we know what we need to do, but it's nice to have an outside perspective on what you need to do better sometimes. So, communication audit, I think we kind of have a general understanding of what it is. Um, you know, you're looking at all the different ways that you communicate, what is effective, what's not effective, what are some ways that you can improve, what can you add. Um, and there's different ways that you can do this. You can do it internally, and you could even start small. Let's say you just wanted to do a social media audit. You know, you have 15, 20 social media accounts in your organization, and you know that some of them aren't performing the way they should. Um, you know, one of the things that I like to say is that social media is not a billboard, it's an engagement tool. So if you have staff that are using social and they're not able to answer questions or actively engage with their audience, they're really not using the way it's intended. So, you know, maybe you should look at phasing that out if they're not able to handle it. Things like that. So you can do a small internal audit if you didn't want to do a full communication audit. And like I was saying, you have probably a strategic plan that you update every so often, 3 to 5 years. And I sort of have done that over the years of, you know, taking one and tweaking it a little bit, maybe adding some department goals that I have for that year that I want to try to reach. But this is a little bit more of true action. You know, the plan is a good strategy to have, but these are actual action items that I can reach, I want to measure. And to me, it was just a little bit easier to be broken down this way instead of having the strategic plan. It just, I'll kind of explain it further as I go. And then, of course, you know, you have to have buy-in. I wanted to hire an outside company to do this, and that was a good little chunk of money. Not a lot of money for other departments, but it was a lot of money for my department. So I needed a little extra money to have that buy-in from my mayor and aldermen, and then to explain to them why it was important and share my progress over time. So I'll go through that as well. So just a little quick overview about Collierville. We are located pretty close to Memphis. We're in the same county as Memphis. It's the, we call it, it's like the corner of Tennessee. You know, we have Arkansas really close to us, but Collierville is actually on the east side. And so we border Mississippi and a neighboring county. So it's, you know, lovely place to be. Obviously, I'm the PR for Collierville, so I'm always going to talk it up really big. But it's a beautiful place. Our little town square there. We had a Hallmark movie filmed there once. We have lots of commercials and things filmed there. It's very idyllic. I compare it to like Gilmore Girls, you know, if you are familiar with that. We've got great community events. And the one in the bottom corner there is our Independence Day celebration, which we're gearing up for again. Very well attended, fun event that we do at the start of July. And then our double-decker bus there, we had a mayor that was really into like London culture at one time. So we ended up with that bus, which sometimes works. Okay, so you know, why is it a good time to conduct an audit? It's important, obviously, for that transparency piece. It's important for accessibility. Those are obviously huge. We have all these ADA compliance needs that we need to meet, you know, when it comes to website design and things like that. So I think it's really important to make sure that your communication is actually reaching people and that they are actually, you know, digesting the information. And like what I was saying before, that having that audit is a great foundation for an actionable plan like I did, like a 5-year communication plan on how I can improve things. Or you could even use it for a communication plan, a strategy plan, if you wanted to kind of do an overhaul there as well. And as I mentioned, you don't have to hire an external company. Um, and the reason that I wanted to was because I really wanted to do a full town-wide audit. I wanted all of our, 9 departments to be audited. I wanted it to be done, one time really, really well. I wanted that outsider influence um, because you know how it is. There's some departments that you probably work well with if you're in a similar role as me. Um, and then others that might be a little bit more standoffish to you. And me coming in there and telling folks what to do isn't always very well received. Um, so this was a way for me to say, hey, these guys said that you should do it, and here's why. It's not me. I'm not telling you that you're not doing it very well. These other guys are. So that's, one of the reasons. And of course, I obviously had was able to add that little money to my budget to have an outside company do it. So internally, obviously, it's much lower cost. You kind of know what you need a little bit. And like I was saying, start small, just do a website audit, just do a social media audit, look at things that you might have printed materials. I mean, there's lots of things that you can do and not do it all at once. You could do small audits over time if you didn't have the money to do a full-on big audit. So these are some things that you need to look at when you're doing a communication audit. And I think, let's see, print materials and e-newsletters, internal communication processes. That's one that is so important, but I think sometimes gets forgotten about. Internal communication can be really hard and kind of an afterthought sometimes. And that's something that I certainly know that we could do better in our organization. Another thing that I loved that this company did that I hired was they did these stakeholder and leadership interviews. I gave them certain people to talk to in the community, from elected officials to like civic group community leaders, a few department heads, some folks that are, on a volunteer board. And it was really great getting that feedback of some of those outside leaders and the things that they see that we do well and things that we could do better or improve upon, yes. And bring consistency in messaging. That was really big for me because, as previously mentioned, we did have a new logo rollout. And again, there were some departments that were using the new logo really well, and some of them that were really slow to the change and weren't wanting to do that. And this gave me a little bit more authority to say, they were wondering why you haven't changed to the new logo on your webpage or on your social media account. They thought that was kind of odd. So again, it wasn't me telling them what to do. This is an outside person kind of confused about it. So there's different tools that you can use for an audit, whether you're doing it yourself or this is, some of the things that we also gathered together and gave access to the company that we hired. Surveys obviously are a great tool if you can get some people to answer them. It's always good to keep those short. I have a website survey, feedback survey I keep up on the website all the time. And that way, as answers come in, which I think we maybe have had like 15 people answer it in the past few years, but as those answers come in, I can look at those and get that feedback from people. But you can throw something out there on a social media page of just like one question and just get feedback that way, and just do it here and there. And the shorter the better. Obviously, people will be more inclined to give you some answers. Google Analytics obviously give you an incredible amount of information. Social media insights the same. Those interviews, like I said, are really great to get the feedback from people that are using different parts of your, whether it's your website, people out in the community that are in leadership positions, Chamber of Commerce members, things like that, to kind of hear some of those interactions and how they receive information. And of course, if you can conduct a focus group, that's also a great way to get some of that feedback too. see. This is one of the tools that I like to use, especially when it comes to our website. Um, I know we can use ChatGPT for things now, and it's something that you could kind of use together, honestly. And this is a way that, I could show a department like, hey, you are writing at a graduate level. Um, you're writing at graduate level. It's a little hard to understand. We need to be a little bit more plain language. Um, this is the HemingwayApp.com. You can take like a chunk of text from anything. I use it, like I said, primarily for my website, put it in there, and it sort of gives you a grade on, you know, what level you're writing. There's like Adobe accessibility tools. There's a lot of free tools out there that you can use to kind of help, like I was saying, show a little bit of a proof that some things need to be changed. And now getting into our audit specifically. So when my supervisor, quit making fun of me for wanting to audit myself, he made sure that I had some money in the budget to do this. And we hired DFW Strategic Communications. And the reason that I liked this group was they were completely outside. They obviously were in Texas, we're in Tennessee. Um, I so it was like totally fresh eyes. No one knew who Collierville was. And actually, one of them had been here before, which surprised me. But people might have gone to Memphis. They might, but for the most part, they really didn't know who we were. So they also are people who are former government communicators, which to me was pretty great because it shows they know what to look for. They understand things that we do. They understand some of our frustrations. They could pretty much guess what departments I had trouble talking to versus other ones that worked with me well. And then they also have a broad range of services. And this isn't like a plug for DFW's strategic communications, but I really liked having that relationship started with them because if I wanted to hire them for something else to write a communication plan for me or even work on a project with me, I'm a pretty small department, so I wanted that relationship with them in case I wanted to use them in the future for things too. So essentially what they did, they looked at who we were as a community. They did some research and kind of found out population size, some of our major corporations that we had here. Like, for example, we have FedEx Technology Center here, which is basically like FedEx's IT. They have a huge campus here in Collierville. So we have a lot of people that are from many different countries, a lot of folks from Asia. So you look at some of the demographics and kind of learn a little bit about who we are. Then they looked at what we had existing, our communication channels that we were using already. And a lot of this came just from us doing Zooms and talking over the phone, and then kind of, nosing around and finding things on their own as well. I gave them that list of those stakeholders, and they held those stakeholder interviews. And I received, different quotes about things. And I really liked looking at some of those. One of the quotes was, "People love living in Collierville. The town should increase efforts to spread that story." That was a nice one. Nice, but also, constructive feedback, right? Another one was, "The town's social media content has become more conversational and less stuffy in tone. Residents have more appreciation for town staff and a better understanding of municipal services." It's probably someone that just likes me, like my my mayor or something might have said that. I don't know. But anyway, so they did all those interviews and, kind of gave us areas of improvement that way. But then they also looked at, some of those insights and analytics digitally to see where we were lacking, where people were spending most of their time. Looking at our website to see like functionality of the menu, for example. I helped launch that website, so I know it inside and out. I could work on it with my eyes closed. But for the menu to be super bulky and hard to find things, I was just kind of like, what it is, because I use it day in and day out. It's not hard for me. So that sort of feedback was really great. Same thing with social media is very similar. And then they looked at some of the printed materials that we do, things we might send with our utility bill or different flyers, and gave us some feedback on that. Branding and inconsistency was huge, obviously, with some of our flyers, which I think is a pretty common problem. And then they gave me about 10 recommendations of things that I could do. And I'm kind of giving just kind of highlights of what some of the things that they found.
Hey, Jennifer, I have
Sure.
a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Rosalind in the audience, she asked a couple. So, everybody wants to know, can you give us a general idea what the cost of the audit was? And then can you give her just a little snippet of how were the interviews conducted? That you said they interviewed your stakeholders. Were those phone calls virtual, in person? Just a little detail on that.
Yeah. So our audit was $8,000. And I think their price was based on community size and department size. And again, how big or small you really wanted to make it. And I wanted to go full on every town department, as much as we possibly could. So it was a little bit on the pricier end of their scale. But I was quoted that it was going to be anywhere from 5 to 8, depending on the range that we wanted to do. They're really great about working with you on that. And then, luckily with a price like that, I didn't have to go out for quotes or anything like that. So that also was very appealing for me. And then the other question was the stakeholder interviews. That was preference. I had some folks that they were talking to who, do not like to do Zoom, so they preferred a phone call. But it was all virtual. They never even came here. It was all Zoom phone calls, looking at our website from afar. So that was really cool. And like I was saying, they were extremely thorough with it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm. So some of the things that they found, let's see, strong social media presence, consistent subscription emails, high click-through rate. They said we had a pretty good website. And obviously there were tweaks to everything, that, the mega menu and little things like, maybe changing my footer to include links to like the county website, things that I really hadn't thought about, but was really great, great advice. And then areas to improve, I talked about the branding. The crisis communication follow-up was one that was really important to me because that was more of a storytelling aspect. Um, for example, probably similar to you guys, like when we have a snow event, it's pretty significant. And I always try to get out there initially, talk about how we're putting down this much material on the street. We have these snow plows ready. We've got folks that are ready to come in, at 4 a.m., start plowing snow. And then, kind of talk about things as we go. But wasn't always great about kind of wrapping up that story in the end and talking about all the work that different departments did. So that was something that I had in the back of my head when we had our snow event, this year, and was able to do. Expanded video content and storytelling that turned into an actionable item I'm going to talk about in just a second. And then the greater community listening and feedback mechanisms. They were saying that we needed to do a big community survey. They really emphasized that. I had not been a part of one in the decade that I'd been here, so it really was time. But great thing about the fact that it was time is that we're also doing a comprehensive plan with our development director, economic development and community engagement director, And I never can get that one right. So he's doing this huge comprehensive plan, that's going to take a couple years. And then communication is going to be a huge part of that. So I'm going to get a lot of those survey feedback, listening results as part of that too, which is great because the timing is much, timing is great because it's needed. So once I had all those results back, I really just took their recommendations and I thought, this is perfect because I can use these recommendations they gave me and come up with my action items. So, and I didn't use all of them. I was trying to think how many they gave me. Let's see, they gave me 10 recommendations. So for example, expand the existing social media policy to include protocols for updating content, as well as criteria for channel performance used in determining if an account should be discontinued. That was something I never really had thought about before. I have a social media policy that I give to different departments, but this was a way for me to update that policy very specific to get an actual result. And that was one of the things that I really loved about those recommendations. And I decided that I would take those and kind of develop, like I said, a 5-year plan using some of those recommendations, not all of them, and the ones that I felt were the most crucial to start with. And then I needed to get my mayor and aldermen to be bought in, because if I had their buy-in and their support in moving forward with these changes to our communication, I knew that I could have the department heads also to be bought in, and basically have the authority to move forward, like I was saying. So what I did was I wrapped up their audit. Well, they gave me this document that was, like 20, let's see, how many pages was it? Like 30 pages of my audit results. And I packaged it up really nicely. Our mayor and alderman had a retreat starting in January. And I made sure that I was on the agenda to do a presentation at that retreat to talk about the audit results and then my plan moving forward. I also wanted to make sure that, I had their feedback, because if, they had something that was a higher priority and I needed to adjust that, I wanted to make sure that they knew that they could make those adjustments. This wasn't set in stone. This wasn't my plan. This was really their plan, So, like I said, I gave them this nice little book. I had a slideshow of like 7 slides. I kept it very basic and high level because I didn't want to get too much in the weeds with them. And basically, using those recommendations that I got from my auditors, I made this timeline of what I was going to do over the next 5 years. And so year 1 would be 2025. And then once I, kind of gave them an overview of those 5 years, I broke things down even more. So 2025, I said, this is what we're going to be doing, our goals, this is our actions, how we're actually going to achieve those goals, and then the benefits of why this is important and why we need to do this. And I did this for every single year. And I was saying this is very high level overview. So, and some of the things that I started this year is I looked at that social media policy. I made sure that we had ways to, phase out an account, very specific about how we should be interacting and engaging with accounts, where to find, high quality photos, all these things that I really didn't have in the current policy. And then another thing that I've done is I had a digital media person who was retiring in May. So that need for, more video content, it was in the back of my head. So I thought, well, I can reclassify this position to be more video focused. And so I was able to do that. And I'm almost there, but I'm going to have that job posted hopefully in the next few days, actually, and get that person in here in July to be a video content person. And then strengthening that interdepartmental collaboration. I have started these brainstorming sessions with departments, and I basically have, tapped these communication liaisons that either run their social media pages or might do some updates to the website, might send out, some sort of notification, whether it's a letter. If they do any sort of communication, I want to make sure that I check in with them, and I have been checking in with them consistently, having, a group meeting. We're doing that on a quarterly basis where we all get together and just talk about different communication needs and issues. And then I kind of give them like a little bit of homework to do, like, here's what we should be looking at is, broken links in our website over the next few months. And that's been really great to have that connectivity with folks that are actively involved in communication, but, may not have thought they were because, they're not working for the communication department, but they are communicating within their department. So that was, again, how I kind of broke things down. I didn't put all those slides on here. Year two, the branding and listening tools. That's going to be a part of our comprehensive plan. And website redesign down the road. That's something that I knew was kind of coming. And what was interesting is, when I presented all this to the board and had my 5-year plan, I asked for their feedback. And we had a couple new folks that were elected in this last election. So they were wanting us to do a website redesign even sooner. They said that our, site was hard to navigate. They couldn't find things they needed. So, I was thinking I was going to do that a little later on down the road, but I might end up doing that sooner than I'd planned. Because like I said, I wanted their buy-in and their feedback. I wanted them to know that this plan wasn't set in stone. This is something that, is kind of living and breathing, and we can make changes to it as we go. And I wanted their priorities to be reflected in the plan as a whole.
Hey, Jennifer, I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
someone has asked if you would be willing to share your policy, and I don't know if they are speaking about the social media guide or the communication plan. Stacy, maybe you could follow up on that, but somebody was asking if you would be willing to share that. And along that same line, the social media guide, you mentioned that you're hiring somebody with some specific set of tools for the new position. Are you
Mm-hmm.
finding that your social media guide is pushing more towards like specific actions and things to do, or is it more of a general kind of overview of what you see as your social media being? And the reason I'm asking that is I know myself included, a lot of folks are, kind of thrust in the role with not near as much training specifically as we would like, and social media is always one of those things. So are you giving very specific tips, ideas, uh, items to do on social media, or are you just kind of an overall, this is what we want our values to look like, and then use it as you see fit? Did that make sense?
It did. Um, and, I'm doing a little bit of both, actually. So when it comes to, the policy and the guide that I've created, that's definitely much more general. Certain things like if you want to create a new account, let's say for like Blue Sky or something, like, some new platform, you have to go through my office. There's a request procedure, and that was something that we hadn't had before. And same goes if you want to deactivate an account. These are the steps you need to take. And one of the audit was very specific about certain departments and what they should be doing differently. And so I did that with more that departments one-on-one. Like HR had their own Facebook page dedicated to recruiting. It was called Recruit CYERable. And it really doesn't, it's not that effective. So it makes more sense for HR to be putting things on, say, like LinkedIn. And a lot of it's for some of those reasons, right? Like you're stretched pretty thin. You shouldn't be using multiple accounts if you're not reaching the audience that you need to. And yeah, kind of for that specific messaging of, like we have a museum of CYERable history. Doesn't make sense for them to be on X anymore. Probably not. It's not really where their audience is. They're very much going to be more effective on, Facebook and Instagram, maybe even Nextdoor to reach some folks locally, because it really is kind of a, local history centered museum. So a little bit of both. And I am happy to share the guide and policies. Some of this is still a work in progress. But we are definitely making strides. And, that was one of the things I have listed here is to make sure, we're reviewing this on a consistent basis. I love referring back to this audit that I have to kind of remember some of those specific details about some of these action items. Another thing that I do is I send a monthly email I call it the communication report, and I send it to my department heads and my mayor and aldermen, and I show them like, overall communication strategy. These are the things that we've done to get towards that goal of, 2025. These are the steps that we're taking, and this is what we've done this month. And then I have, other things that I'll share with them in that communication report too, like typical kind of communication stuff, like this is what got the highest, media for the month. This is what our top web pages are, things like that. But I want to make sure that every single month I'm showing them how we are making strides towards these goals for the year. And I definitely want to look at it on an annual basis too. That'll be my plan once I've reached a year since this implementation, and see if we have met it, overall. And then, like I was saying, it's a living document. There's some things that I definitely will be moving around. Different priorities may change based on different needs, that, comprehensive plan and some community feedback. I might hear things and I might need to switch something around. Clearly, we're going to be doing a website redesign much sooner than I'd like to do. But if, our mayor and aldermen want to give me some money to do it, we'll do it. I think it's important to, be open to that feedback, not take things so personally, which is hard to do, especially when you put so much time and effort into something. But, at the end of the day, if you're making it hard for someone to find information, you're not doing your job very well. I think we might have a couple more questions. That was I'm kind of reaching near the end. I did want to mention that I'm happy to share, lots of things with you guys, but I don't want to share the full audit results with you, simply because, these folks did a lot of work, and I don't want to just like hand over everything that they did. But I can obviously share some of the things of kind of like their outline and the structure of what they looked at, if anyone is interested in any of that. and kind of like the amount of time, because it really was a pretty short process. We started in August and I had the results ready to go in November. And then that gave me some time to kind of dig through and have that presentation ready for the start of a new year, to get going with my 5-year plan.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Stacy followed up. She said initially she was looking for the social media guide, but she'd be very interested in seeing the communications plan as well. She's working on one of those for the overall agency, and she's trying to adapt it from a department guide, and she doesn't think it's comprehensive enough. Rosalind also said she would like to see your media guide and your comms plan. And then John asked, have you changed your plans to use more video, in particular TikTok, Facebook feeds, and other produced and live video activities? And then how and who produces the videos?
Yeah, so like I had shared, one of my action items for this year was to create a video content position in my department. Up until this point, we had it was just me. I have a full-time or had a full-time digital media specialist, and then I had a part-time person. And so we were just kind of share the brunt of that work. Other departments, they might do some social media videos here and there on their own. Some of them have, some grant funding where they have some produced videos where they hire outside vendors. But for the most part, it was just, we would just do, I love social media video. I love kind of that short, sweet, getting the message out fast, being able to have a little bit of fun with something sometimes. So, and me coming as a background of the digital media person, I'm comfortable doing those things too. So that was just something that we kind of share within the department. But when I have this new person hired, like I said, hopefully in July, that's going to be video content focused solely. I will adjust some of those things as far as, how we will be strategic with our video content. Um, you know, we kind of have set up the roles and responsibility of what this person is going to be doing, but I definitely will be adjusting some of these things to make that strategy, whether it is adding more to our YouTube. That's something that I certainly want to do, like have, categories for specific things on like a YouTube page, doing more PSAs, even like how-to videos, how to get a library card. There's a lot of ideas that I've had over the years, but just hadn't had, the time to get them all done. So I'm really excited about putting some emphasis on video content production. We also have an agreement with our high school. Collierville has its own school system here. And so with our public school system, and we have one of the largest public high schools in Tennessee. There might be one that has been built since, but it's just over 3,000 students, $100 million high school. And one of the things that they have is this very fancy TV studio, and they have these students that are studying video production and TV. And so we have an agreement with the school as well, where they produce some videos for us, which is pretty fun.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Do you have more questions?
Well, we will see. Does anybody else in the audience have questions? I will give them the opportunity first. I definitely have a question myself.
Okay.
Anybody out there, you can unmute yourself and ask. You could put it in chat and I will ask it while you are all thinking about that. Oh, here we go. So Eric asked, what was the most surprising result of the audit?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I think it probably was the website that we needed to do more updates to it, because we had launched it in 21. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, this thing is really new. And it was light years ahead of what we had previously. So that one, hearing that my menu was a little clunky, our search feature wasn't really up to snuff. those were things that obviously I really needed to hear because I didn't see them.
Excellent. Stacy asked, how did the agreement with the schools for their media production come about? Really, she wants to know how would one lay the foundation for that because she says that's an incredible idea, and I agree.
Hmm. Money. We give them some money, and
Uh,
yeah, and, it's part of like a grant essentially that the town has with the school system, and it's not much. I want to say uh, it's somewhere like maybe 10,000, which pretty decent amount, $10,000 a year. But I'm very specific about. I meet with their TV director, and we have very specific things that we want them to be involved in, and we set that up every summer where we just talk about what content they'll be doing for that year. Um, they also come and stream our board and alderman meetings for us, so I don't have to be back there running cameras. They do that work for us. So it's nice, it's give me one of those things that you can get for free. I say go for it, but um, we have that contractual agreement with them.
Excellent. Nice. I want to go back to one of your earlier slides. You mentioned the internal communications processes for the audit. Um, so I'm curious about, can you give us anything on how either they conducted that portion of the audit, a little bit of what it included, or what were the outcomes from that with respect to internal communications? I'm one that I firmly believe, here at Emergency Management, we do a lot of great things. We got a lot of great people, but we tend to forget to talk internally. And it's
Mhm.
always been my pet peeve and one that I want to get better at. So, uh, either aspect there with the audit, what did they do to look at, or what were your outcomes? What are you gonna focus on now?
Yeah, that's a really good question because obviously, they're not here with us, kind of observing the way that we communicate to each other internally. So the way that they kind of got their feedback there was those interviews that they did with different department heads and even elected official. Um, so, some of the things was like, how can the process of initiating um, communication projects and keeping us on track be improved? That was one of their questions, the auditor's question to one of my department heads. And, they said maybe they should use a form to collect information about upcoming projects and campaigns, what audience they want to target, budgetary needs. Um, and let's see if I know that there were a few other ones. How well do you feel information flows back and forth between communications and the department head team? Um, so they said that we do pretty well with our email updates, letting people know what things are going on. One of the things that I also provide to my town administrator every week, who's my supervisor, is upcoming activities and events that we have that she sends out on a weekly basis on Fridays to our department heads and mayor and board. So that way, you know, they have that kind of at their fingertips. They know when to expect it. Um, they asked about, and it was kind of those workflow questions. What's your impression of the town's communications workflow for communication materials that you're involved in, or what you've asked for? So this was a little bit more, like we don't have any sort of um, like process, like a form for like if you want a flyer made for this event, this form you need to fill out to do that. It typically is like, someone gives me a phone call or sends me an email and requests this and has like a date, deadline, and then we follow up and meet with them and do what we need to do. There's no formal process there. Um, and you know, it's one of those things where people they kind of got both sides. Some people like that there's not a formal process, some people don't. Um, and you know, I think we're still small enough organization where we do okay with that. But if as we continue to grow and get bigger, it is something that is certainly in the back of my mind about changing how we do those workflows. Um, but then another part of it is we're also in this ERP process. We're doing a lot of things over here in the town of Collierville. So our IT department is doing this ERP process that is going to be kicked off here in the next. Well, it'll probably be they're ready to hire somebody, so it'll probably be July 1 when we start this. And you know, some of these internal communication things will be addressed during that as well. And I'm certainly going to be plugged in. You know, to where those changes can be made and all that. So again, another one of my priorities that will probably be added once I get the true timeline of how that ERP process is going to go.
Excellent. Thank you. You mentioned your small community. Just for some background for the audience, how many people in Collierville, and how many employees? You talked about your group. You've got 9 social
Mhm.
media accounts. Like, how many people fall under that? Either one.
So population, we're about 53,000 people in Collierville. I think it's like one employee to 1,000 people. So we have kind of close to 600 employees. And and then in my department, said it was 2.5 people, and now it's just 1.5 people. We're going to be adding that other person here very soon, hopefully. And then we have about 9 departments, and I work with typically, you know, maybe 1 or 2 people, like I said, that touch some sort of communication in those departments. Um, I work with them fairly, you know, regularly, monthly basis at least.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. That's, small is a relative term. We don't have that many places in Kentucky that are 60,000 people. So, you know, it's big city compared to Lawrenceburg or Frankfurt, where I work. So there you go. Excellent. All right. Any other questions out there? All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. Everybody help me give her a round of applause. Don't go anywhere. I've got a couple of quick announcements, but again, Jennifer, thank you so much for doing this. I'll shoot you a follow-up email if you're interested in sharing that comms plan or your social media guide. I will share that with the people that attended. I will make put the recording of this up on the YouTube channel. I will send a copy of your PowerPoint presentation out to the people that attended today. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Lots of thank yous. Lots of this was wonderful. I totally agree. Thanks for doing that. So everybody, you have my contact information. If you have any questions, let me know. There's our YouTube channel where the recording will go. I have one more webinar currently scheduled. I am working on July and the rest of 2025. But next month, we're going to talk about scientific communications, thoughts, and considerations. We all deal with subject matter experts and how they struggle to speak the same language as the layman and the public. So I'm hoping everybody will benefit from this presentation. We have Steve Sugarman. He's the Vice President and Corporate Health Physicist for Summit Exercise and Training. Looking forward to that. Registration is open on our website. I will send out some information in the follow-up email for this with a direct link to be able to register for it. So looking forward to that. Other than that, again, I want to thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your time and doing this. It was a great presentation.